I once had a young loadmaster on my crew, barely 19 years old, fresh out of tech school. Every briefing, he sat in the back with his arms crossed and he said almost nothing. And I made decisions about him. I decided that he wasn't engaged. I decided he didn't care about the mission. Turns out I was wrong. I was the problem. If you've ever felt like your boss doesn't trust you, there's a good chance they made the same decision about you that I made about Zach. Today, I'm going to show you exactly what's happening in your boss's head, why they're almost certainly wrong about you, and what you can do to change their mind. My name is Jason Harris, and I spent nearly 30 years in the United States Air Force flying combat missions around the world. Combat operations in Iraq, Afghanistan, and the Horn of Africa. 11 combat deployments and more than 470 combat missions. Today, I fly the Boeing 777 airplane for American Airlines with nearly 300 people behind me every flight. I've taken what I learned in the cockpit into companies like Caterpillar, Lockheed Martin, and Ford, and many others. What I have seen over and over is this: the organizations that win are not the ones with the best strategy. They're the ones where people actually trust each other. And most leaders have never been taught how to build that kind of trust. In this video, I'm going to show you why your boss doesn't trust you from the one perspective that nobody talks about: the boss who got it completely wrong. 3 things: what I actually decided about Zach and why, the signals your boss is misreading about you right now, and what you can do to change their mind. So stay with me. I made up my mind before I asked a single question. I was a brand new aircraft commander on the C-130, and I had a loadmaster named Zach. He's barely 19 years old, fresh out of tech school. Sharp, capable, with all the technical credentials you'd want in one of your young airmen. But in every brief before every mission, Zach sat in the back with his arms crossed. He didn't ask questions, he didn't push back, he barely made eye contact. And of course, I did what leaders do when they don't know someone. I labeled him. I had a perception of him. He was disengaged, he was checked out, not invested in the mission. And of course, I gave him the standard speech. I told him I needed him more present. I talked about the importance of the team and the mission. Nothing changed. Then one night, before a mission, something shifted. Instead of briefing at Zach, I stopped. And I actually asked him, is everything in the back of the aircraft good to go? How about you walk me through what's already been done and what needs to be done? Maybe show me what am I missing and how can I actually support you? In that moment, Zach's whole body changed. His whole demeanor changed. He sat up, he leaned forward, and for the next several minutes, Zach actually showed me how capable he was. He walked me through the cargo compartment with more precision, more detail, and more total ownership than I'd seen from anyone on the crew. He quoted our tech manuals, he ran his own numbers, he offered even a crew-assisted timeline that I hadn't even considered asking him for. He was never disengaged and he wasn't checked out, but he was waiting for someone like me, his leader, to care about him and to care about what he actually knew and what he was capable of. Zach wasn't the problem. I was the problem. I want you to think about this from Zach's side. He showed up to every briefing prepared and ready. He knew his job cold, but every signal in that room from me and all of the other leaders in that room signaled and told him that his opinion wasn't valued and that we didn't care what he thought and we didn't care what he knew. His body language was responding to the signals that myself and the other leaders in that room were putting off, and they were responding to the environment that we created, not to his level of investment in the mission. See, Zach wasn't quiet because he didn't care. He was quiet because no one had signaled and shown him and told him that his input mattered. I, as the leader, I had built an environment and a culture that was not conducive to him being the best version of himself without even realizing it. This happens every day in organizations. A new team member shows up and they're not speaking up in meetings. Their manager, their supervisor, they read it as disengagement. And 2 weeks later, that team member has checked out because they picked up exactly what their boss had already decided about them. They picked up that that boss, that supervisor, that manager didn't care about them, didn't value them, and did not value their input. No one says a word to them, and then the spiral starts. What I learned from nearly 30 years leading teams in the cockpit and in organizations around the world is this: the boss who doesn't trust you has almost always formed an opinion without the full picture. They watched in one meeting, they noticed one moment, and they made a decision. Not because of who you are, but because of what they assumed you were. and their perception of you. Ask yourself this: has your boss actually asked you what you see from your perspective? Not what you finished, not whether the task is done, but what you actually see, know, and bring to the team. If the answer is no, it's clear that their picture of you is built on incomplete information. Number 2, your boss is reading you wrong. Here's something I know from being that boss and from spending years coaching leaders across dozens of industries. Bosses misread their people constantly, and the signals they misread fall into the same patterns over and over. I personally did it with Zach. I watched him sit quietly in a brief, and I read that as disengagement, but I was wrong. And I promise you, your boss is misreading something about you right now. The reality is that silence gets misread as disengagement. And if you are the kind of person that processes before they speak and you don't perform with enthusiasm in the meetings, but you do your best thinking alone, your boss may have labeled you as not fully bought in. They're not actually seeing your work and reading your work, but they're reading your body language in a meeting. Independence actually gets misread as an attitude. If you can figure things out without asking for constant guidance and you're able to solve problems before they escalate, some bosses actually read that as not respecting the process and authority. What they're actually seeing is capability, and it actually makes them feel uncomfortable. Sometimes that directness that you have, it's misread as disrespect. And if you push back, if you ask the questions of why, or you challenge the decisions, what some leaders hear is, you don't trust my authority. What they don't hear is actually, I care enough about this mission to tell you the truth and to challenge it. Your candor is a sign of investment, but some bosses, they're going to punish you for it. I almost wrote Zach off permanently. If I had, I would have lost one of the best crew members that I ever flew with in my career. Your boss is possibly making that same mistake right now, not because you're not capable, but because they've never created the conditions to see what you actually bring. That's not a you problem, that's a leadership problem. Ask yourself this: is your boss watching what you produce, or are they watching how you produce it? Because if they're grading your communication style, your personality in meetings, or whether you show up the way that they expect, that's a perception problem. And perception problems that can actually be fixed. This is what I call leading up. Number 3, you can't control anyone's assumption, but you can create an environment that changes it. I know what some of you are thinking right now. Jason, that's great, but my boss isn't going to change. They've already made up their minds, and maybe that's true in some cases, but most leaders made a decision based on incomplete information. I know because I was one of them. And when you give them new information, they have the capacity to update their perception. The question is how? How do you do this? I want you to consider creating a moment where your best work is impossible to miss. You don't connect a boss's assumptions by telling them that they're wrong, but you can help correct and modify their assumptions by making it impossible for them to miss what you bring to the table. You could do this by documenting the problems that you're solving, sharing insights about the challenges and the problems you're solving before someone else does. Make your thinking visible. I want you to consider what you could do to create one real conversation, not about a task list, because connection comes before commitment every time. I didn't start trusting Zach because of his technical knowledge. I started trusting him because that was the first time I actually saw him and engaged with him directly. And you can create that same moment from the opposite end. You can extend trust before receiving it. When your boss doesn't trust you, every instinct in your body says to pull back and just stay out of their space. But that instinct will keep you exactly where you are. I want you to consider, what can you do to stay visible, to stay engaged? I want you to consider giving before you receive, because trust, it goes in both directions. Trust is built in the small moments, not these big declarations. Zach didn't earn my trust in a single briefing, but he actually earned it across every pre-flight, every checklist, every time he called what he saw from the back of that aircraft. Your boss's trust, it won't flip in one conversation, but it can start in one moment that you create. And you have more control over that moment than you think. Ask yourself this: when was the last time your boss saw your best thinking, not just your finished work? The analysis behind your decisions, the problem you caught before it became one. If your best work is invisible, I want you to start making it visible. That's where the trust begins. All right, before we touch down and land this plane, here's what I want you to take with you today. 1, your boss formed an opinion about you before they had the full picture. Zach never changed, but my picture of Zach changed. You don't have to earn back something you were never given. You just have to create the moment where they can finally see you. 2, the signals your boss is reading are probably not what they think they mean. Silence is not disengagement, independence is not attitude, and directness is not disrespect. Most leaders, they're just pattern matching based on behavior they never even thought to ask about. 3, you can create that moment that changes everything, not by defending yourself, but by making your best work visible, building one real connection, and extending trust first. Your boss doesn't trust you yet. 3 words in that sentence are doing a lot of work. Not yet. That's how you build trust. If you want to know exactly where you stand as a leader, I've created a free 2-minute leadership assessment. It takes less than 2 minutes. You'll get your score immediately once you complete that assessment, and it'll show you the specific areas where your team's trust might be breaking down. The link is in the description. And if this message resonated with you, subscribe to the channel. I'm putting out content every week for leaders who are done with being average and ready to build teams that truly perform. Blue skies, fair winds, and all the best, my friend.